The subject of this video is to discuss the fine points, the merits of shooting from the hip, maybe a comparison with shooting from the hip as opposed to the shooting from the, with the Leica, shooting with the viewfinder. In one of my previous videos, I kind of showed the idea that shooting from the hip, you can sit there and do the camera left and right with ease, and I gave the impression that I was spraying. I would walk along and just keep pushing the button and get home and see if I got anything, and that was poor because that was not what I had in mind at all. I'll give you an example. In a small town, where, as opposed to New York City, you're walking down the street, you may walk for 15-20 minutes without getting a subject that you want, and then finally you see something coming your way, and it may be off to your left, so you kind of have your camera off to your left, and you don't pay a whole lot of attention to the subject. They don't really see you. It's especially good if you happen to be an old guy, because the younger people don't look at old people like they look at younger people, so you have an advantage being an old person. But in any event, so you wait till the subject comes in view, and then when you get it where you want it, you push the button maybe a couple of times, and you get what you want. Now someone will say, gee, how can you do that? You're not focusing. And my comment is, if you've ever seen somebody who practices their sport, for example, I've seen guys come up to the foul line and put a blindfold on, they take the basketball and they make quite a few shots into the hoop with that blindfold on, because they have practiced so often, they know what they're doing. The same way with shooting from the hip. If you practice enough, you know where that camera's pointed, you get what you want. So that answers the question about the gentleman that wrote to me and said I was kind of spraying, and that's, not what you get. So the other guy said, Garry Winogrand, he always used the Leica viewfinder, and he would never have shot from the hip. He says his best shots are with the viewfinder, and I can't disagree. I like Garry. Garry has great stuff. I decided to go buy one of Garry's books. I got one of Garry's books, and I looked at a lot of his stuff, and it turns out that a lot of his stuff, the people are at an angle. If there's a street sign in the street, it's not straight up and down, it's on an angle. People are on an angle. So you might say, is that what Garry wanted? Or did it happen, he was he was getting the shot so quickly that he didn't have time to frame it? I don't know. I'm going to give him credit and say that's what he wanted. He has good stuff. Okay. At the same token, the same people that talk about viewfinder being the only way say once you frame it, you have your shot. So right now I'd like to show a short video of Garry talking about getting his shot.
Well, when I'm photographing, often enough somebody will come up to me and say, you're getting good pictures. And I don't know. I know that what I photograph is interesting. I haven't seen the pictures yet,
Okay, we heard from Garry, and something I would add to that, some of the documentation says that Garry in his photography lifetime shot between 2 million and 5 million prints. Now that's a pretty wide margin of data. It should be closer to that, but if he shot, let's say 2 million shots, and they were all framed properly, well, shouldn't he have 2 million shots that should be out there in the public? No, because not all the shots that you frame are going to be the shots that you want, and I'll agree with that. But let's say he had a 90% failure rate. 90% failure rate shooting, which is pretty high. Then shouldn't he have between 200,000 and 500,000 prints out in the public? Well, I don't know. I know this book here, a pretty thick book's got like 450. So there's got to be a lot of stuff out there. And also, I noticed that in terms of some of these books, after a person dies, that's when the money starts coming in. Like in this book, I wish I could find the page, but it's a page talking about posthumously we printed this Garry Winogrand shot from the archives, you know. So it may not have been what Garry wanted to print, but now they're printing it. The same way when you talk about art, which I don't understand the photography art, but there was a lady named Diane Arbus. He had some very good photographs. She died in 1971. She did look like she didn't die rich, and 34 years after she died, one of her prints sold for $553,000, another one for $290 something. They were all over $100,000. So I'd like to see the time frame between when she died and who would come along and say, oh yeah, I'll pay $553,000 for that. That's perfect, you know. Like other people start at $300, $1,200. They went all the way from 0 to 553. So it's another interesting part of this whole thing about people dying and their prints being, you know, put out in books. So basically what I'm saying is that I don't really think there's a whole lot of difference between shooting this way or shooting from the hip. You get the same results. I think it's the technology. I mean, when you had the Leicas, how many people could take a Leica, shoot from the hip, take a shot, rewind with one hand, and take another shot? Well, maybe they only had to take one shot. I'm not going to argue that either. But in terms of candids, you take a camera like this. The reason why you use these small cameras, you take a camera like this, even if you're near somebody, they're going to hear this thing. Whereas this little guy here, I just took 3 shots. I don't know, did you hear it? So anyway, I think it's technology. The technology advanced. You can shoot with a little camera, a little tiny guy, get good results, good sharp results. And I'm not at all knocking the viewfinder guys, because the stuff is good. All these guys that were in the past history got you know, great shots. I'm just saying it's not the only way. So you can't knock shooting from the hip as it's, you know, the old guys did it, so that's the only way to do it. So anyway, that's my opinion, and like I said, you go out on the internet, you get as many opinions as there are people out there making videos. So it's just my opinion, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it.